Hi, welcome to Digging to China. I'm Dong Shong. Today, let's discuss the topic of China shock. Recently, American economist Paul Krugman published an article in the New York Times titled "Preparing for the Second China Shock." In his article, Krugman frequently refers to the concept of the China shock. What does this concept entail? It denotes China's practice of exporting goods at low prices, flooding global markets. This has led to significant discontent in countries like the United States, as it heavily undermines American manufacturing, leading to substantial employment issues. Consequently, the United States opted to increase tariffs on Chinese goods. Both the Democratic and the Republican parties agree on this issue. Krugman raises a pertinent question. Why does the Chinese government prioritize exporting goods rather than increasing domestic incomes and internal demand to achieve a balanced supply and demand? China's adoption of this economically imbalanced structure isn't due to a disregard for economic laws or a desire to cause disruption. Instead, it stems from being perceived as the only viable option. This path emphasizes production over consumption. This decision is driven not just by economic factors but also political and social considerations. It represents a comprehensive choice. Through exploring these issues today, we gain a clearer understanding of the dynamics governing political and economic operations among nations. Let's begin by examining Krugman's article and the ensuing discussions it has sparked. To summarize Krugman's piece, it was published in May in the New York Times under the title "Preparing for the Second China Shock." The concept of the second China shock is a response to the first China shock, which began in the 1990s when China, leveraging its low-cost labor, significantly ramped up production of inexpensive goods, thereby disrupting American manufacturing. The author also mentions in the article that from the 1990s until 2007, the United States lost 1.5 million manufacturing jobs, leaving a significant impact on American economy regarding employment. Now, the second China shock refers to China's current approach in industries like solar, photovoltaics, and lithium batteries, which are now global exporters. This situation naturally threatens job security in related American industries. We are all aware that the United States has been promoting the concept of reindustrialization. It's evident that China's export of green energy-related products directly conflicts with this agenda. Consequently, the U.S. is expected to implement corresponding measures such as tariffs on Chinese goods to safeguard its domestic manufacturing sector and enforce its trade policies. Indeed, this has become a cornerstone of U.S. foreign trade policy. In his article, Krugman poses the question, why doesn't China strive to achieve a balance between consumption and production, utilizing excess production to serve domestic consumption? By doing so, the United States wouldn't need to impose sanctions on China, and China wouldn't attract criticism for exporting goods abroad. This underscores the inherent limitations on economists' perspectives on these matters. Let's approach Krugman's question from a simpler angle. Exporting goods is not merely a standalone practice. It often stems from internal overcapacity, which can be seen as an overflow of domestic production capabilities. This raises the question, does China currently face overcapacity? And if so, what are the reasons behind it? Addressing these points requires examining relevant data to shed light on the issue. Based on Chinese statistics, in 2023, the lithium battery industry accounted for 70% of global shipments, while the energy storage battery sector surpasses 90%. According to a report from the International Energy Agency, China also holds over 80% of the global production capacity in the photovoltaics industry. This proportional structure strongly suggests overcapacity. Discussions on China's overcapacity issues started years ago. The result of excessive supply and overcapacity is a structural imbalance, evident in record high production volumes and correspondingly low prices. Recently, prices of electric vehicles in China have sharply declined, accompanied by the rapid entry of 100 to 200 brands into the industry. This situation resembles China's past experiences in the real estate sector. Why does this sudden rush into overcapacity occur? Historically, China has faced periodic episodes of overcapacity, particularly in traditional sectors like coal and steel, which have consistently struggled with excess production capacity, exerting significant economic impacts. Overcapacity leads directly to the proliferation of zombie enterprises, diminishing overall economic efficiency. One of the most recognizable forms of overcapacity which directly affects the general public is evident in China's real estate sector. In recent years, Chinese developers have built a surplus of housing units far exceeding the country's actual housing needs. This exemplifies a form of overcapacity. Behind the various manifestations of overcapacity lies a common problem. China's economy displays significant structural abnormalities stemming from uneven development. This skewed development is fueled by government economic subsidies and policy biases. Simply put, subsidies lead to overcapacity in certain sectors, while policy biases contribute to redundant and inefficient construction, resulting in substantial resource wastage. In today's sectors such as green energy, photovoltaics, and electric vehicles, China's government offers generous subsidies and incentives. Companies in these industries find it easier to obtain bank loans, credit lines, and government support. They prioritize securing funding and staying operational amid China's demanding economic conditions, emphasizing survival over profitability. So, the concept of overcapacity is directly linked to a concept known as the accumulator concept. China's economic operations are not primarily driven by meeting market demand or adhering to market principles. Instead, they are influenced by the will of this accumulator. Whatever it desires, China tends to follow. This will is not market-oriented, but rather guided by considerations of power and control. This explains why the Chinese economy operates differently from conventional norms. So overcapacity is seen as an inevitable phenomenon. Without it, the functioning of this accumulator could potentially face operational issues or even collapse. To uncover the reasons behind these phenomena, we must explore deeper social structures. Next, we will examine the root causes of the accumulator from the perspective of the broader social systems and its structure. When discussing overcapacity, it's important to engage in some reverse thinking. Many see overcapacity as an irrational anomaly, contrasting it with the perceived natural state of balanced capacity and supply-demand equilibrium. However, this perspective is itself an idealized misconception. The global trade system is often portrayed as a perfectly balanced and ideal regime by advocates of free trade, but in reality it isn't self-generating and it doesn't exist in a vacuum. In global trade, besides buyers and sellers, the decisions made by nations play a pivotal role. Every global trade organization inherently reflects national interests. Behind any purportedly free market lies the necessity for protection by a nation's armed forces. Without it, the stability of such markets could be jeopardized. Thus, the external environment of market transactions is influenced significantly by the powers of nations. Markets and national interests are closely interconnected, and those who advocate extreme free trade often overlook the essential roles played by the states and the politics in shaping trade dynamics. This perspective is fundamentally flawed. As the famous sociologist Karl Mannheim noted, both liberalism and socialism envision a future where a kingdom of freedom and equality will eventually arrive. In this sense, they share a common vision. However, the ideal kingdom they imagine will likely never materialize. Instead, we must focus on observing the realities of existing kingdoms. In today's world, the nations actively participate in economic activities, meaning economic operations aren't solely characterized by borderless free trade and exchange. The reality aligns more closely with the concept of national economics, where states play a significant role in shaping economic dynamics. A prominent scholar in the field of national economics during the 19th century was Friedrich List, a German economist. List believed that the primary driver of economic development was a nation's pursuit of enhancing its national power. In his work, The Natural System of Political Economy, List argued that the political economy or national economics stems from the concept and essence of the state. He taught how nations could maintain and improve their economic conditions within the global context and their specific international relations. List emphasized that nations implemented diverse economic policies in their activities to safeguard their interests and weaken those of their adversaries. Take, for example, well-known practice such as implementing tariff protections and engaging in product dumping, which are economic policies designed to bolster domestic strength while weakening adversaries. Viewing the economic strategies of nations like China and the United States through the lens of national economics offers profound insights into current global dynamics. In the case of China, a nation with a centralized governance structure, the market economy functions as a component of the state machinery. Analyzing China's economy without considering its politics and governments is akin to focusing on individual trees rather than the entire forest. Essentially, China's economic policies are tools utilized by the state to address both internal and external challenges. Currently, deliberate overcapacity in China serves several major purposes. One primary aim is to help alleviate China's unemployment crisis to some extent. According to public sources, traditional job opportunities in China have dwindled significantly due to the relocation of supply chain. While employment in new energy sectors is on the rise, although the growth in new energy jobs is gradual and cannot fully offset the loss of traditional jobs, it serves to mitigate the trend of unemployment, preventing a rapid increase in China's unemployment rate. The second purpose is aimed at mitigating the crisis of decoupling. Amidst the context of China-U.S. economic separation, China is determined not to isolate itself entirely from the global economy. Thus, it strategically focuses on expanding in the new energy sector through extensive production. This approach enables China to maintain economic relationships worldwide, particularly through industries such as photovoltaics, green energy technologies, electric vehicles, and others, ensuring its continued integration into the global economic system for sustainability. Based on statistics from 2023, China primarily exported silicon wafers to countries such as Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia, collectively accounted for over 65% of its export share. Battery wafers were predominantly exported to Turkey, India, and Cambodia, comprising over 68% of exports in this category. The largest recipient of module exports was the Netherlands, representing 23% of the total export value. The concentration of exports to these Southeast Asian countries in the Netherlands is attributed to their robust re-export capabilities. Southeast Asian nations target the U.S. market, while the Netherlands focuses on Europe's market. Utilizing these intermediaries enables China to circumvent sanctions imposed by countries like the U.S. to a significant extent. The third purpose involves exporting goods extensively to generate foreign exchange income, which effectively bolsters national reserves. Last year, China's total goods trade exports amounted to 23.7 trillion yuan, maintaining a stable level. Data from Wind indicates that China's year-on-year export growth has not sharply declined in recent years, while export growth has decreased compared to 2010 when viewed over a longer period. It hasn't experienced a drastic plunge. This adjustment in export composition is primarily responsible for these trends. Before 2018, ASEAN countries accounted for just 12% of China's export trade. By 2024, however, this proportion had surged to over 18%. Meanwhile, the share of exports to the United States dropped from over 20% previously to 14% currently. This shift illustrates a slow and prolonged decoupling process between China and the United States. Throughout this transition, China has utilized certain Southeast Asian and European countries for re-exporting, thereby mitigating the risks associated with decoupling. Another significant aspect is that China's dumping due to overcapacity allows it to use low-priced products to undercut American manufacturing, reducing employment opportunities and thereby posing a challenge to the United States' reindustrialization efforts. This tactic effectively serves as a form of competitive aggression. So, the above points clearly explain why China deliberately fosters overcapacity. China's subsidies are intentional and not arbitrary or confusing policies. They serve a specific purpose as part of the country's strategic economic maneuvers on the global stage. However, according to Krugman's proposal, if China were to implement financial subsidies for its domestic citizens to significantly increase domestic demand, it would fail to generate foreign exchange income, slow down efforts to mitigate external decoupling, and inadequately resolve the fundamental issue of domestic unemployment. Additionally, it would also fail to impact employment in the United States. Certainly, one could argue that such actions would improve people's lives and increase their incomes. However, it's essential to remember that the Chinese government is not elected and isn't accountable to its citizens in the same way. This underscores that Krugman might be pretending to be naive, making straightforward questions appear complex. Krugman, being a free trade advocate rather than a national economist, lacking the political and practical insights needed to fully understand these issues. The economists shaped by the globalization era will increasingly find themselves out of sync with new times and evolving civilizations destined to be phased out. All that being said, the key question remains: will China's economic strategies succeed? Can they really drag the global economy down again through overcapacity? Can China come out unscathed? The answer is clearly no. If industrial transformation and upgrading fail, China's only option would be to revert to an economy based on assembly factories. Otherwise, rising unemployment would accelerate the need for significant societal changes. Conversely, the cost of aggressively increasing production and dumping goods abroad primarily results in global overcapacity and higher unemployment in other countries. Compared to the upheaval of a regime change, offloading these problems onto other nations is a more favorable option. In today's international trade wars, those who reap the short-term benefits of cheap goods must also face the long-term consequences of rising unemployment. Essentially, every benefit comes with a corresponding cost. Delving deeper, overcapacity is rooted in an excess of production resources, including human resource. People themselves are a form of production resource. If they remain idle and underutilized, it leads to severe negative effects and social instability. Currently, the number of idle individuals globally is increasing, with each country aiming to convert these hard-to-manage idle population into manageable workers. By exporting products to capture markets, countries can undermine production in other nations, reducing their workforce and increasing their idle populations. In essence, countries must adopt a beggar-thy-neighbor approach to protect their own economies. The core issue is the significant and unbridgeable gap between the world's potential total supply and total demand. This gap is like a tickling time bomb. Whoever holds it will inevitably face the consequences when it explodes. The era of globalization is coming to an end, though it hasn't completely finished yet. For now, China can still engage in this system and use it to externalize some of its internal conflicts. However, as China's participation in this global game continues to decline, the strategy of mitigating issues through overproduction will no longer be effective. When that time comes, China will face even greater internal turmoil and conflicts. China is desperately trying to pass this bomb to other countries, but there is a strong possibility that after making its rounds, the bomb will return to China and explode. Why is this likely? Because the control over when the music stops, signifying the end of the game, does not lie with China. Instead, this power rests with the core countries. China, being a peripheral player, lacks the influence to dictate the game's outcome. So, it's not a matter of if the bomb will explode, but when it will, and when it does, it will undoubtedly have catastrophic consequences. Thank you for watching. Please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.